What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 65. Josh Callaway, Tom Green with you on this Monday, March 11th, 2024. We haven't had a show in a week. It was a busy week last week, so we had to sit the late week show out, but we're back for a normal two-show week. Had a lot going on, a lot to talk about. Spring practice has started. The Sooners are hitting the field for the very first time today. Tom and I will talk about that, some things we're watching for as spring practice gets underway. We're going to finish up our status report series. We got cornerbacks and safeties. We'll also talk about some hoops as well as Selection Sunday is just 6 days away. Where the Sooners stand going into the Big 12 tournament. We'll talk about it all coming up a little later on in the show. But Tom, I think obviously we got to start with spring practice. We've been kind of gearing up toward this for a while. Once the season ends, obviously you have winter workouts and things like that, but that's not visible to fans. It's not really visible to us. So in a lot of ways, this kind of feels like the unofficial start of 2024. In a lot of ways, the new team 130, as OU likes to say. And here we go. Spring practice is off and running. They're going to practice later today. They'll have 15 practices over the next month, basically, leading up to that spring game. Wide open question. What are you watching for? What's the storyline for you as we go into spring ball, whether that's a player, a coach, a position, whatever it may be? Where is your attention going to lie as we get started here with spring camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start with that offensive line. You lose basically 5 regular starters plus other guys that started multiple games on that line last year. You're only really bringing back 2 guys with starting experience. Jacob Sexton started a few games late in the season. Troy Everett made a couple spot starts at different spots. And you're bringing in 4 transfers, and you're just trying to fill that out and see if Bill Bedenbaugh can work his magic again, because he's done it time and again, developed that line consistently, produce NFL guys. But this is probably one of the most extensive rebuilds you can really think of. And it's coming during a very pivotal offseason where you're moving from the from the Big 12 to the SEC. Right. So I want to see how that offensive line shakes out. And B, I want to see how quickly they can gel. Because what are the challenges of adding all these new faces and trying to get them to work together? I don't think there's going to be any personality clashes or anything. But when you're playing with guys that you haven't played with before, especially when you have so many veterans, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be easier because they have so much experience, or is it going to be difficult because they don't know each other?
Right. No, I mean, I think that's been the biggest talking point of the entire offseason so far is that offensive line, is how it's going to piece together. I'm certainly curious, and there's a lot of time between now and week 1, in late August, early September. But just kind of whenever we go to camp, who's that first team right now? What's kind of the hierarchy there? And can those guys who are kind of, we talk about the transfers, but those guys that are kind of waiting in the wings, like your Heath Ozidas, your Jake Taylors, your Logan Hallens, are those guys going to factor in? I think those are kind of the question marks for me with that offensive line group.
Without having seen it, without them having practiced once yet, if I were to have to guess what the offensive line was going to look like day one right now, and obviously we'll monitor it, while we're out there, and I'm sure they're going to do a lot of mixing and matching because that's what spring is for, really, to kind of toy around with the puzzle pieces and see what your best 5 is. But if I were to guess right now, I would say it would be Jacob Sexton moving back to left tackle, Febechi and Nwewu at left guard, Troy Everett handling center, Garen Hatchett at right guard, and then Spencer Brown at right tackle, with Michael Tarquin as kind of that swing guy that can step in at either tackle.
Right.
That would be my, opening day guess as of March 11th.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. On that 5. That sounds about right to me. And we got to meet some of these guys last week and hear from them for the first time, which was cool. All on the YouTube channel. As many interviews as we could get. 34 guys. Can't really cover everybody, but a lot of them are on the YouTube channel. And I think I'm with you. I think that's the 5 for now. But like you said, there's some other guys who could factor in there, like Michael Tarquin, and some fans have kind of been pumping the Josh Bates train maybe as your center, and he could maybe be in the mix. He could maybe push Troy Everett a little bit there. So that'll be something we'll watch, obviously throughout camp and going into the fall, obviously as well.
And it's another guy. It's can Eugene Brooks be like that next freshman that kind of just emerges at some point, whether that's early in the season or comes on mid-season. But he's a guy that he's going to have a leg up on some of these guys because he's coming in as a freshman and he is highly touted and
Sure.
has a very good build for an interior lineman, but we'll kind of see what that looks like.
So say already has the size,
Yeah.
already 3 bills. He's a big kid coming in just as a freshman. There's a lot of things you could also jump to as far as things to watch. I mean, I think for me, I think maybe more than anything, it's the year 2 jump for the future core, the future stars there that we talked about. I mean, going into spring last year, it was these 3 5-stars: Jackson Arnold, quarterback, obviously, Peyton Bowen, PJ Adebawore on defense, and they're not. I mean, Arnold obviously is going to be your starting quarterback, so he is more so than the other two as far as being the faces of the program. They're not quite there yet because Danny Stutzman is back and Billy Bowman is back, but you're kind of looking for those guys to start to really assert themselves as the guys they're expected to be, coming in. Because these guys, the hype was through the train. You put anything content-wise with those 3 guys last year at this time of year in spring, fans couldn't get enough of it because it's just these are the guys that are going to be the cornerstones of our program as we move into the SEC. Now it's year 2 for them. We're actually all moving to the SEC. You figure, obviously, Arnold's your starting quarterback. Peyton Bowen's going to be right in the mix to play a lot of snaps in that backfield. And PJ Adebawore, I mean, why not playing a big role in that defensive end room, which is really crowded. We talked about that, last week on the stats report. So I'm really excited to see the jump for those guys moving into year 2 for them defensively. Just kind of seeing how they handle the SEC and just overall, just kind of growing into a bigger role on the team.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that jump for those 3, especially, obviously.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Peyton because he was a guy that, through the first maybe half of the season last year, he was, probably tracking toward being a freshman All-American. Then he had that little foot injury that limited him for a little bit, and, his playing time fluctuated down the stretch. But, I mean, he was a guy that, as soon as he was on the field, he was making an impact, whether it was, in the secondary, playing some cheetah, and then he moved back to safety. Blocked a couple of kicks, led the Big 12 in blocked kicks. So he's a guy that's clearly a playmaker in multiple facets of the game. And now he's going to be probably competing for that second safety spot with Robert Spears-Jennings this spring. Kind of see where how that shakes out. But whether he starts or not, he's going to be a key piece of this defense. He's going to be a heavy rotation player. You're going to see an uptick in his usage.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a few minutes with the safety stats report. And then some other ones just kind of running through like a laundry list. Obviously, all the 5-star, all the freshman defensive linemen. I mean, all of them. David Stone, Okoye. I want to see them all. And we got to talk to these guys again last week. David Stone, Okoye, those guys' interviews are on the YouTube channel. Okoye says he's put on 30 pounds since he's been here, which is insanity. And David Stone is David Stone. And we've talked about him at length and him being immediate impact. Seeing those 2, Jaden Jackson, Wyatt Gilmore, Nigel Smith, seeing all of them is a major storyline, I think, throughout the spring. Obviously, seeing Zach Alley for the first time and getting to talk to him at some point for the first time is obviously another major storyline, I think, coming into the year. And then just, I don't know, maybe just all the new guys in general. I mean, all the transfers coming in. We got to talk to all of them, like I said last week, and seeing how a lot of these new faces fit in. Your Deion Burkses, your Jake Roberts, your Sam Franklins, then on the defensive end. So there's a lot to watch for and a lot to be excited about as spring camp finally gets started. We've been kind of building up to this for a while, and so the fact that it's finally here is nice, and we'll get to see these guys out in a uniform and eventually play a little bit halfway in a spring game. So there's a lot of things to keep an eye on. I'm excited to get this thing rolling.
Yeah, especially with the freshman defensive linemen, particularly, I was always intrigued by, David Stone and Jaden Jackson in particular.
Sure.
But now that Jacob Lacey is officially, medically retired,
right?
How quickly are those guys going to have to step in, and how quickly will they be able to step in? Because obviously, you have some bodies there, but your defensive tackle spot is a little bit thinner now that Jacob Lacey's out of the picture. He was a guy that you were really counting on, started 11 games last year, was going to, a vocal leader in that locker room. And now you lose him, basically 6 months before the season starts. So can a guy like Jaden Jackson, David Stone, can they get into that rotation a little bit quicker and come along quicker? Obviously they have the hype, they have the skill sets there. It's just a matter of getting into that, position to be able to play college football. I mean, it's not always an easy transition, but obviously being here in the spring is going to be very helpful for them. As far as some of the transfers, I'm really interested in that tight end room. It just looks so different from where it was last year. I think it should be for the better. Not just because of the personnel that they're bringing in, but because of, Seth Luttrell's background, because, Jake Roberts is familiar with Seth Luttrell's offense,
Sure.
because Joe John Finley is going to have a little bit more say in the offense. And because a guy like Bauer Sharp just has like this versatility to kind of do some different things as a former quarterback. He's obviously a wildcat option at Southeastern Louisiana too. Is that something, a little wrinkle that they might throw in there too?
Right.
Devon Mitchell we've talked about him. He's a guy that should be finishing his junior year of high school right now.
Yeah.
How easily will he translate to the college game for him? And you mentioned Deion Burks. Like, can he fill that Drake Stoops hole? Very talented wide receiver room, obviously. And really curious to see just how they fill that slot position and what Deion Burks can bring to it, because he didn't play it much last year, but he's got plenty of experience there. And just talking to him, he seems like a guy. He's going to be a media darling. We'll see if that also correlates to being a productive guy in that wide receiver core.
Yeah, he's electric. His interview is another one that's on the YouTube channel. I remember asking him kind of just, trying to find the right way to word it, but basically like, this receiver room is really crowded and you came here anyway. Is that kind of a level of your confidence that you're going to, make your way into the field? And he, with zero hesitation, yes. I'm not shy away from competition at all. I planned to carve out a role for myself. He even mentioned that Drake Stoops, what he did was a selling point for him, thinking I can do that. I can serve that role. So he's electric. I recommend fans check that out. He's going to be a fun one.
And something with him that I didn't realize until I spoke with him. Him and Andrel Anthony know each other from not just being in the Big Ten before.
Yeah,
they were like number 1 and number 2 wide receivers in Michigan coming out of high school.
Yeah.
So they've been familiar with each other, and they chatted a little bit when Deion hit the portal. So obviously, he knows what to expect in this offense. We saw how quickly Andrel made an impact before he went down with that ACL injury. So just want to see what Deion Burks can do in that slot.
I think my favorite connection that I uncovered, and this is completely unrelated, on that media day that we had last week was talking to Casey Thompson. I asked him about Brennan Thompson and just kind of, if you guys bonded at all over being the guys who came from Texas to OU, because that's obviously very rare. And he said he actually hosted Brennan Thompson on his recruiting trip to Texas in summer of 2021, which is hilarious. I mean, it's just, you can find connections all over the place in college football, it seems like. So that was really cool. He said he hosted him and that they've kind of caught back up since he's been here. They've become pretty good friends. Obviously, no relation, Thompson name. But yeah, it's kind of funny kind of uncovering the bloodlines and finding how everybody knows each other. That was pretty cool. Casey Thompson, by the way, was phenomenal. That's another interview that I recommend people check out.
Yeah, and just speaking of connections, we were over there talking to Des Malone, and I asked him about Doug Deacon, Oklahoma's new special teams coordinator, because they were together at San Diego State. He said when he found out that Doug was getting hired here, he called him up and then went down to his office the first day I was here and said he loved playing for him. Obviously, position like corner, especially as a younger guy, you're going to see the field on special teams. So he really liked what Doug Deacon brought to the special teams unit at San Diego State and spoke really highly of him. So I want to see how that special teams unit improves too, because we've talked about how bad they were last year. Obviously, they're going to have an open competition at kicker. They should be in good shape with Luke Elzinga back at punter. But yeah, they clearly need to improve there. And I want to see if Doug Deacon is the guy that can kind of elevate them to that next level and make that a strength of this team as opposed to a pretty glaring weakness.
Storylines aplenty, and we'll talk about them all and break them down all over the next several weeks. There is no media anything this week. I'm sure some fans are kind of wonder that if you're plugged in. Brett Venables decided he wanted to hold off on that, so we're not having the luxury of an open practice or any post-practice availabilities yet. Unfortunately, we wish. But not yet. They decided they wanted to wait a little bit. Then next week is spring break. So they're just off next week. They're not practicing. So we got to wait a little longer before we get to that stuff. But it's coming. And again, we got to talk to Brent Venables. His press conference is on the YouTube channel. He went through a million things. And we got, like I said, to meet a lot of the new players. They're also there. So a little something to carry you into the start of spring ball, which is coming up. Spring game on April 20th. Also, another little note thing. Pro Day is tomorrow. Most fans know that. Pro Day is tomorrow, the 12th. In Norman. We'll be getting down there, of course, and we'll get to catch up with some of those guys on the way out as they go to the draft. Drake Stoops and Rondell Bothroyd and Austin Stogner, all these guys are going to the draft next year. So we'll get to hear from them, see what they do tomorrow. So keep an eye out for stuff and content on the YouTube channel and on the website coming out of that tomorrow. Elsewhere in football, let's finish up our status report series. So we've been doing this last month plus, taking 2 positions at a time. Just a little temperature check on how they're going into spring camp. We've done 8 positions. We've got 2 more to finish it up with cornerbacks and safeties. Jay Valai and Brandon Hull's position groups. We'll start with cornerbacks to kick this thing off. Tom, obviously, it's led by Woody Washington, who is back. That was a big win. We talked about that at the time whenever he made that decision. It wasn't really clear. He decided to want to come back and play another year at Oklahoma. You also bring Gentry Williams back. He's banged up right now, but you do bring him back. We talked about Des Malone a little bit there. You bring him in. Thoughts overall on this cornerback room? Obviously, got some young talent in there. Kai Walker is back. Josiah Wagner is back for year 2. I'm sure I'm forgetting some other names, but Kendall Dolby is back. So that cornerback room is an interesting spot. It was pretty good last year, and you're bringing everyone back, and you added to it with Des Malone. How are you kind of feeling about this cornerback room under Jay Valai moving into the SEC next year, handling these obviously bigger, stronger, faster SEC receivers that they'll have to deal with next season?
Yeah, I think you feel good so long as they can stay healthy, because that was the issue last year. They were young and they were banged up, but now Woody Washington is back for a 6th season. Gentry Williams, he's not going to participate in spring practices after having a procedure on his labrum. That nagging injury that kind of cost him a few games, and was kind of impacted by it in some other games last year. So hopefully, he's on the mend and he'll be back in time for summer workouts and all that stuff, but he won't be participating in spring. And then Kai Walker came on really strong last year. Started a few games late in the year, gave up just 1 touchdown pass and like 225 pass coverage snaps. I think he limited opposing quarterbacks to a 51.5% completion rate, which is pretty good. So you want to see his continued growth. You like what you saw from him, especially late in the season. And then, like you said, you bring back some of these younger guys that got their toes wet last year, but couldn't stay on the field because they were all impacted by injuries too, whether it was, Makari Vickers, Josiah Wagner, Jacoby Johnson. And then I think Des Malone is going to be a guy who, he's going to be in that rotation. He's a really good player at San Diego State. He's rangy. He's got the size to be, a corner in the SEC when you're going against some of these bigger receivers in that league. And I'm curious how a guy like Jocelyn Malaska kind of,
good call,
makes his in. Is he more of a developmental guy for down the road? Because he didn't see the field defensively during his time at Utah. He's a guy that probably going to at least get some reps on special teams in some regard. Brent Venable spoke really highly about how well he tested during winter workouts. I asked him a little bit about that when we got to meet him for the first time on last week, and he said I think his vertical was like 38 inches. I think he said his 40 time was around 4.4. So he's obviously got a lot of athleticism. It's just kind of raw. We'll see how Jay Valai develops him. But you like what they're bringing in and what they're bringing back. I think you feel pretty confident about it as long as that group can stay healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you on health, especially Gentry Williams. Obviously he had a hard time staying on the field last year. He's a good football player, but he had a hard time staying on the field last season. That really hurt him. If you told me Gentry Williams plays all 12 games next season, I feel great about the room. If he's not and he's having a hard time staying out there, not that the room is thin necessarily, but there's some questions. Behind Woody, obviously Des Malone's a big step up in football. No disrespect to San Diego State in the Mountain West, but go from that to the SEC is a big jump. Kendall Dolby did a pretty good job last year. He played that cheetah spot. He kind of just did whatever they needed him to. And then like we kind of talked about those young guys that are kind of just floating around. Josiah Wagner, who was a kind of a darling of camp last year. Around this time, going into spring and then into the fall, and like you said, Makari Vickers. There's a lot of bodies in there, a lot of options. Jaden Rose, another one that we haven't talked about a lot. He kind of just floats around between. I don't really know, to be totally honest, if they like him more as a cornerback or a safety. He's been hurt a lot. He missed basically all last season, I believe. He wasn't really an option. But he's another name that he's got great length and stuff. It's just kind of like, are we going to see this guy, at some point? So it's a pretty good room, though. I think you have to feel better because it's basically the same room, only with Des Malone added. So I don't know how you could feel worse. I mean, I guess you could feel the same, but I think you have to feel at least the same, if not better. And we'll see how it goes. It's just going to be a lot of health, I think, is probably more than anything. Like you said, it was really banged up last year, and it hurt him at times. So you can keep Woody and Williams on the field with Malone and Dolby and probably maybe a little Wagner and Walker to kind of spell those guys. I think you're in pretty good shape. So I think it's a pretty good room for Jay Valai going into next year.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how much corner Kendall Dolby actually ends up playing.
Yeah,
because right. they kind of moved him out to cheat out of necessity last year after Justin Harrington got hurt, but he played really well there. Especially they loved bringing him in the slot on third down as a blitzer. He was really effective in that role, and I think they really like him there. But with Deshaun McCullough back, Justin Harrington getting that 7th year of eligibility, he obviously won't be practicing in the spring while still nursing that ACL injury that he had early last season. But when he comes back, does that kind of create a little bit more of a log jam at Cheetah where you can, Kendall Dolby is obviously one of your better defensive players. You need to find a role for him. Do you move him back into that corner rotation if you have, enough healthy bodies at Cheetah? So I think that's something to watch more so in the fall than in the spring. But certainly if we see him repping more at corner while we're out there in practice this spring, it's something worth, kind of noting for down the road.
And a little housekeeping on Jaden Rhodes to clean that up. Yeah, Brent Venables announced that he on September 19th that he was having season-ending surgery. So yeah, he was out all last year. Just to kind of clean that up. So yeah, a lot of bodies, a lot of options there. Natural transition over to safeties to kind of wrap this up. The stash report series we've been doing. Obviously, you're led by Billy Bowman, who's back. Reggie Pearson's gone. He graduated off his eligibility. He's finished up. But you bring back Billy Bowman, like I said. Robert Spears-Jennings is back. We talked about Peyton Bowen. You did lose Dave McCullough to the portal. Key Lawrence, you lost him to the portal as well. You have Justin Harrington, who it's hard to classify what he is. He's a cheetah. More of a DB than a linebacker, I guess, but he's kind of both. But you include him in this. I don't think we really talked about him in the linebackers. We also officially know he's back, which we didn't know last week. We announced that last week on his press conference that Justin Harrington did get his waiver. He's going to be back. So this safety room is pretty good. I mean, it's obviously led by Bowman. That was a huge get. Him and Stutz were the two big wins of the offseason to get those two guys back. Everybody knows that. We talked about that at the time. I think you're feeling pretty good here. You didn't add anybody in the portal. The only portal additions you made on defense were Caden Woolard at defensive end and then Alaska, who Tom just talked about. That was the only portal guys you added on defense. And Des Malone, sorry. So you didn't add any safeties, so that was the point. The crux of the point was accurate. How are you feeling about the safeties for Brandon Hall here? I mean, this is a group that going into last year we loved. We did our kind of position preview. I think it got one of the highest grades. And I think it's still going to be pretty well thought of, just more than anything with just that three at the top with Bowman, Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, and Robert Spears-Jennings. That's a really good starting point. How are you feeling about this group, the safeties group, moving into next year?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat there. Like, if I'm Oklahoma, I'm feeling really confident about that top line. Obviously, Billy Bowman, one of the best safeties in the country.
Yeah, right.
Absolute monster last season, 6 interceptions, 3 for touchdowns. Him coming back was a huge win for this defense. He feels he's not a complete player yet. Obviously, he wants to clean up some stuff. I think he led the team in missed tackles last year. Some of that's not always his fault because he is just the last line of defense, and sometimes you don't always get them. Sure. But if he can clean some of that up and kind of take that next step to elevate his game, he's going to be an All-American type guy. I mean, he already is an All-American caliber player, just didn't necessarily get the honors. But between him and Robert Spears-Jennings and Peyton Bowen being back, I think you feel really, really good about that top 3. But after that, you just don't have a whole lot of experience, especially if Justin Harrington's staying at Cheetah. It's basically just freshmen the rest of the way. Reggie Powers, Jaden Hardy, Eric McCarty coming back from the
McCarty's
last year. So it's like, how quickly can some of these younger guys develop and get on the field to give you a little bit more depth in the back end there. But if you're just having to rely on those three guys for most of the reps, you're not sweating that. You're feeling real good.
Yeah, I'm with you. Eric McCarty's a good one to kind of serve as that X factor guy I kind of like to bring up every time. Is kind of like he could really help you. He was out. He tore his ACL in his final game in high school the previous year. So kind of the same thing Andy Bass is going through right now is what Eric McCarty had to go through. So he was always behind the 8 ball all year last year. Now he's back healthy. Really good athlete. Obviously, an Oklahoma kid just down the road there in McAllister. He's one to keep an eye on. I really think he's a good football player, and I'm not sure if he'll factor in this year with the guys they have at the top. But he's one that as he gets healthier, could be someone down the road to keep an eye on. Like you mentioned, those freshmen with Jaden Hardy, especially. But yeah, you're set at the top with RSJ, Bowen, and Bowman. You're not going to find a lot of safety rooms that have 3 guys that you feel better about, really across the country than that. It's a really fun group, and you're feeling pretty confident. Kind of similar to the cornerbacks. Probably health is a big thing here. Not that these guys have been banged up, although Peyton Bowen had some problems last year, and RSJ's had some problems in the past as well. But just because it is a little top heavy, that if you 1 or 2 of these guys were to go down, you had to lean on somebody to play a lot of snaps. That could, I don't know, could be a little hairy. But overall, I think the safeties room is still in a great spot. Brandon Hall has done a great job at building up the depth at this room. We talked about that going into last year, and it's the same boat moving into this season. So good spot. It's a strength of the team. This entire defense is in a good spot. They brought back so many key members, like we talked about before,
at every level,
added to it, and so you're feeling pretty good, pretty much everywhere in your defense right now, frankly.
Yeah. You said bring back key guys like at every single position, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jacob Lacey news obviously hurts, but you're still bringing back Dejon Terry there.
Sure.
On the end, you're bringing back Ethan Downs. You've got R. Mason Thomas and PJ Adebaware. Talked about the linebackers, obviously with Stutzman, and you're bringing back that whole core there too. And then you feel real good about the continuity defensively, and hopefully now with Brent Venables and Zach Alley kind of working in tandem there, that kind of helps them take that next step as they transition to the SEC.
100%. So there you have it. Spring practice is underway. We may do a little bonus stat report next week with like some special teams, since we don't have any. Maybe a little kicker and punter talk, kick returner, punt returner. Brent Venables says it's going to be basically open competition everywhere. So maybe a little bit of that next week. But for the most part, stat report series in the books. Hopefully everybody liked that. A little refresher on each room as we go into spring practice, which starts today. And obviously, we'll be sure to have a lot of spring practice content for you over the next month plus, leading up to that spring game on the 20th. Let's go to some hoops here to finish up the show. 6 days of Selection Sunday. We're at the conference tournament week now. Oklahoma plays TCU on Wednesday afternoon up there in Kansas City. Last week, and we haven't talked to you guys since Monday. So since then, they gutted out a win over Cincinnati that was not pretty, but you take it. JV McCollum missed that game with a shoulder injury that was not expected. It was like a day of game thing. And he missed that game, but they found a way to get the job done anyway. Went down big in the first half, but found a way. They didn't go as well in Austin over the weekend, losing to Texas. Raul Suarez re-injured that ankle, which is horrible news. We don't know the severity really as of now. We'll talk to Porter Moser tomorrow, so hopefully get an update on where he stands moving into Big 12 tournament. Tom, we said going into the week last week, one more win, and Oklahoma should absolutely be in the tournament. Well, they got it. They beat Cincinnati. They're projected in by everywhere right now. Mm-hmm. How are you feeling about this team in general, both in terms of their chance to make the tournament if they lose on Wednesday? If they go one and done in Kansas City, are they going to be okay? And then 2, just long-term prospects of trying to piece together a run while being banged up right now, because we don't know about Suarez. Hughley's still trying to come back maybe, and McCollum's got the shoulder at it. I mean, just kind of where are you at everywhere right now with this team as we move into the postseason now?
Yeah, I think you still I still think this team is in the field.
I do too.
Pretty safely. Even, ESPN's John Gasway and his bubble watch that he posted late last night, that Oklahoma should be safely in and not really in danger of, any bid thieves out there. I think they've done enough between, a 20-win regular season, something that this program hasn't done since Buddy Hield was here. Getting some big obviously, look, you wish you could have finished at least 500 in Big 12 play. You feel a little bit better about that. But you got some good wins on your resume there. Between the BYU game, that Iowa State game looks a whole lot better right now than
that's great.
It looked like a good win at the beginning of conference play. It looks like an amazing win there. And the team doesn't have any losses outside of quad 1. They're undefeated in quad 2, quad 3, quad 4 games, and
that's nuts.
That's good. That's nuts. 11 quad 1 losses is a lot, but it also speaks to how many quad 1 games this team has played this season. Certainly, like you're not going to sweat it at all if they can find a way to beat TCU on Wednesday afternoon in the Big 12 tournament, because that's another quad 1 opportunity. So you're only bolstering your resume there. But I don't think that they're going to be in danger even if they go one and done in Kansas City. I think they should still be pretty safely in. I think most places right now project them as a 9 seed. If they lose in Kansas City, game 1 might fall to a 10 seed, but I don't think they're going to drop all the way to that 11 line where they have to kind of sweat it out on Sunday.
Yeah, I think they're in. I don't think it matters what happens on Wednesday. Obviously, if they win, they're 100% in. I think they're like 95% in when a win gets you to 100%. I would even consider, and we talked about this a little bit before we came on the air, started recording, if Rivaldo Suarez is not 100%, because that's huge. They need him to do anything in the tournament. They're going to need Rivaldo Suarez to be healthy. I would consider not playing him on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
That's, a little scary, because if you hold him back and you lose and you miss a tournament, you'll feel very silly. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're in. So I would consider resting him on Wednesday and just letting him heal up. And probably the same thing with those other guys. Hughley too. I mean, maybe you want Hughley back, I guess, just to get a little feel for it. But if you feel like he could definitely be back next week if he continues to rest, or we might be pushing him, I would think about resting him too, and maybe even McCullum. I mean, I don't know where that shoulder is. Obviously, he was good enough to play on Saturday.
Good enough to start.
Yeah, I mean, right. So I don't know, but I would slow play it. I really don't think this week is that important for Oklahoma, for lack of a less articulate way to say that. I think you just kind of you go in, you're hoping to win against TCU, but I don't think you risk anybody's long-term clip. You're in the tournament, I'm pretty certain, and so gear up for the postseason. Also, if they win, they turn around and they play Houston the next day on one day on a back-to-back, which you rarely have in college hoops, only like in these scenarios. So playing Houston on a back-to-back whenever they are rested is just that's not going to be good for anybody. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they're in great shape. We'll see what they can do on Wednesday. After that last TCU game was really long ago. I don't even know what to make of it. It was back in January. They lost pretty comfortably there in Fort Worth. But again, who knows what to make of that? It was so long ago. And it was a true road game, which this game obviously will not be. So I think they're in pretty good shape. We'll see what they can do. I still think at full strength and everything clicking, Oklahoma could give some good teams. Because, I mean, obviously, if they're 8 or 9 and 7 or 10, it's the same boat in terms of you're going to have a relatively manageable first game against a team that you can beat if you play well. And then you're going to have to play a big dog in the second round. That's just the path. And then if you find a way to win that, it breaks it open, and who knows from there. But, how they will handle a Purdue or a UConn or a Tennessee or a Marquette or whatever top team, I don't know. Remains to be seen. Obviously, we saw them play Houston pretty tough not that long ago. So, I don't know. I think prospects are generally it's March Madness. You get in the tournament, and then who knows? I mean, we see teams going crazy runs all the time. Porter Moser's done it a couple of times. So, they're in good shape. Get healthy. Who knows?
Yeah, I kind of like your point about considering resting Rivaldo if he's not like 80% maybe, just because you think about it, if you rest him, he goes 12 to 13 days rest before having to play.
Right.
From when he injures that ankle to when they play again that Thursday, Friday, whatever it is in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. That's a comfortable time to rest up an ankle if it's not too bad. Obviously, like you said, if they can beat TCU and get one more win, they're 100% in the tournament. But even after that Cincinnati win last week, Porter said he has no doubt that this team is an NCAA tournament team. We'll see if that plays out, but they should feel pretty good about where they're at right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to this is the week there in Kansas City, see what they look like, and we'll see. I had another point I was going to make, and I'm just completely blanking on what it was. But there you go. So Oklahoma will move forward into Kansas City. We'll see how they handle it next week, and just get into the tournament. You see what happens. Also got that 20-win mark, like you said, first time since 2016, which is crazy. Yeah, look forward to seeing it this week there in Kansas City. Oklahoma TCU on Wednesday afternoon in KC. All right, I think that's it. I'm going to think of whatever point I had to make as soon as we finish recording.
Yeah, of course.
That's the way it goes. But we'll save it for next time. Maybe I'll get it in on Thursday show. We didn't really talk about the women's team because they play in like 45 minutes from recording now. So nothing we could say will age well at all. They're in the semifinals in the women's tournament. They're still right on the line of like could host, could not host, which is huge in the women's tournament. So that's a big game coming up in a little bit, which by the time anybody listens or watches will probably already be over. So we won't really talk about it because it's pointless. But we'll have women's coverage as well throughout the week and moving into their NCAA tournament, which is starting at the same time. It's usually offset by the men's tournament by like a day.
Yeah.
So that'll be coming up next weekend. Like I said, I think that's it. Spring practice off and running. We'll have lots of coverage coming in that. Colin will be on the show Thursday. It was a massive recruiting weekend for Oklahoma over the weekend. Future Freak stuff. A lot of guys came to town. A lot of guys on visits. Be sure to talk to Colin in depth about that on Thursday's show. So tune in for that. We'll also recap whatever OU has done in the Big 12 tournament to that point. I guess that'll be just the one game, the TCU game. And we'll look forward into the weekend, Selection Sunday, all that good stuff. So there you have it. For Tom Green, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time, Thursday with Colin, then back here next Monday with Tom, and James Jackson should be able to rejoin us for that show as we break down the bracket. We'll have a bracket by then. We'll look forward to the NCAA tournament, all that good stuff, spring practice. We'll see you guys then. Till next time, for Tom, I'm Josh on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.